Are you filled with fear, doubt, worry about the future of our country? Do you feel the urgency to act before it's too late? If yes, then this podcast is for you. It's time for us to confront the critical issues threatening our nation's fabric, our democracy itself, regardless of our political stance. If you are ready to face reality, handle the tough questions, and find real solutions, then here's your host, Debilyn.
Welcome to the Terrified Nation podcast, the show where we reconsider what's really going on and we take on a fresh perspective to get grounded in today's era of outrage, conflict, and fear, ready to take positive actions to make our nation stronger. I'm your host, Debilyn Molyneux. Today, we're tackling a big question. Why do we only seem to learn through pain or discomfort? Because we're living in an era of rapid change. Some might say chaos, where systems that took generations to build are being dismantled in mere days and weeks. And at the center of it all is Doge. So I first heard this question about learning from a friend, let's call him David. And he has worked inside government and seen how things run. He understands both its strengths and its weaknesses. He remembers when oversight teams like the inspector generals helped to keep things in check. But now those safeguards are disappearing. And as he steps into a new role as a government contractor, he's wondering, well, what comes next? Meanwhile, I have met two new friends who also work in government. Unlike David, they welcome Doge. They've seen how politics has interfered with their work across multiple administrations, both Democrat and Republican, and where the bureaucracy itself stops them from doing their best work. One of them manages hundreds of employees, and knowing that at any moment they could both lose their jobs with a simple email from Doge, they still support it. Because they see a greater good in breaking the bureaucracy that prevents government from working at its best. So what does this mean for the rest of us? Well, for 20 years, I have been asking, how do we create healthy government and healthy society? And right now, it feels like everything is breaking apart. Our old social contract, the belief that the government should serve its people, is crumbling. Trust between neighbors is eroding. Foreign interference and rapid technological advances are making the ground beneath us even shakier. We have the technology and the weapons to literally destroy the world. And we seem to have forgotten that what holds us together is our shared humanity. So here's the impact of Doge as I see it today. Doge's influence, whether for good or ill, is reshaping society at an unprecedented pace. And here's a couple of things that are happening. There are Social Security concerns. Former Social Security commissioners warn that Doge-inspired budget cuts may disrupt benefits for 69 million Americans. And with 7,000 fewer workers, the elimination of the phone service, delays are likely, certain even, just as millions of baby boomers are retiring. And then there are the legal battles. A federal judge has ruled that Doge's move to dismantle USAID is likely unconstitutional. And this temporarily halts further changes. But it raises a bigger question. What happens if government institutions keep falling apart or being torn apart? Another aspect here are the public protests. Across the country, Tesla takedown protests are growing. There are demonstrators who are furious about Elon Musk's leadership at Doge. Tesla stock is dropping fast, and even business owners that have Tesla dealerships are being impacted. There are cybersecurity risks. There are technology experts who warn that Doge's rapid deployment of AI systems inside the government could cause major failures in government services, This one, the jury's still out on this one. We don't know what's going to happen. But there's also a risk that it's going to compromise national security. Now, the news isn't all bad. There could be a one-time economic boost, as there's a proposed bill that suggests sending every taxpayer $5,000 as a dividend, a Doge dividend, would offset the impact of budget cuts. And could this help stabilize the economy? And will President Trump insist on signing the checks himself? You know, the man is a master of optics, no doubt. And as this bureaucracy is shrinking, what new institutions of governance could or should emerge? What do we want the federal government to do for us? So here's what the Constitution says are the powers of Congress. And let's assume for a minute that the Constitution survives this crisis we're having right now around the separation of powers. A quick review of Article 1, Section 8 reveals what Congress is empowered to do. And this is paraphrased, so feel free to look up the actual text yourself. But first of all, around taxes and revenue, Congress alone has the power to set and collect taxes, duties, and fees, period. Around borrowing and the debt, Congress alone has the capacity to say how much we can borrow and to pay it back. This is at the heart of the ongoing debt ceiling debate. Congress has the power over commerce and trade. Congress regulates both interstate and international trade. But for decades, laws have shifted this power to the president in certain circumstances. Whether those apply now or not, we don't know. Congress alone has the power over naturalization processes and citizenship. So Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship contradicts Congress's exclusive power over naturalization. So around money and currency, Congress alone can regulate U.S. currency. So what about this idea that Trump and Musk are floating to add cryptocurrency to our monetary system? Well, that's actually up to Congress. All right, now we're getting into the courts. Congress has the authority to establish federal courts beneath the Supreme Court, which explains the pushback against Trump's interference in cases that he just dislikes the rulings of. Around declaring war and the military, only Congress can declare war, though presidents have found ways around it. And the National Defense Authorization Act funds the military every 2 years. And that's part of the design to make sure that Congress oversees the military. Now, many of these powers have been delegated away over time as Congress has become more and more stuck in unable to function. But the Constitution still places these roles in Congress's hands. So how do we demand that our elected representatives serve us better? So back to David's question, can we as a society learn without suffering? Well, history suggests otherwise. The last time that America was in this type of peril, we were in the Great Depression. President Roosevelt and Congress clashed over how to help everyday people. And many were losing faith in democracy, considering fascism or communism as alternatives to serve the people. Then came Pearl Harbor. Suddenly, Americans had a shared purpose, defending the nation. Congress declared war, granting President Roosevelt broad powers to mobilize the country. The result? Well, the New Deal and war efforts restructured our society. After the war, the GI Bill gave veterans access to more education and more housing and literally built the middle class. Public schools flourished and became more robust around the nation, and stronger communities formed. The lesson? Big crises force big changes. So is Doge our modern day Pearl Harbor? Well, it's too soon to say, but the risks are obvious. The federal government is being dismantled. Democracy is itself in jeopardy, and authoritarian tendencies are rising everywhere around the world. We all want to feel safe. And yet, this is also an opportunity. If we're headed toward collapse, we have a chance to rebuild a system that serves everyone. So who gets to decide what comes next? Well, if the Constitution survives, the answer is clear. We, the people. So through elections 2026 and beyond, we will shape the future. But we don't have to wait for politicians to act. Right now, in our own neighborhoods, we can start creating the communities that we want to live in. Government isn't the only force shaping our lives. We are. Can we build a new social contract without suffering? Well, if Doge is in charge of reshaping society, I have big concerns that that's likely or even possible. For instance, who is looking out for seniors and veterans? Who is looking out for us? Government in the name of efficiency doesn't necessarily serve the people. So to end this podcast, I just want to say change is happening fast. Stay resilient. Take care of yourself. Check in on your neighbors. Keep informed of what's happening. And together, we will get through this transformational time. Join me next time.
So that's it for today's episode of Terrified Nation. Head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen to subscribe to the show. You can get advance notice of new episodes and bonus content by signing up. Head over to terrifiednation.com and join us on the next episode.